Hello everyone, welcome back to the show. Today I'm joined by Hannah Wendt from Everything Epigenetics. She happened to reach out to me on Instagram, maybe because I did an interview with Tyler Pansner, that was kind of my guess, but either way, Pansner kind of talks about genetics, but Hannah specializes in something called epigenetics, which sounds a lot like genetics, but I actually had never really heard of it, and so I was excited to learn more about this topic. And before this episode, I've done a little bit of research, but I'm excited to learn more. So thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks, Harley, for the introduction. I forgot actually how I found you, but you're exactly right. I actually saw your episode with Tyler Pansner and wanted to reach out. So excited to get into it today.
Yeah, that's awesome. Have you met Tyler Pansner, or you just kind of know of him? Or
I have not. We spoke, I think, very briefly, like back and forth via email a couple times, but I'm sure he seems very busy himself, so we have lost touch, but I might have to reach back out and see what he's up to.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting collab in my opinion, but you never know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess, how would you define epigenetics, just for people that are tuning in and are like, I've heard of genetics, but I don't know about this epigenetics word. What is this?
Yeah, so for any of your listeners, maybe they have even started to see this word come up on their For You page, or have seen this word be popularized or used in a lot of different ways before. But really all it means is on top of your genetics. So epi is a Greek prefix that means above or on top of. So we're looking at these little modifications that happen to that stable genomic sequence, because as you know, and your listeners probably know from that episode with Tyler, that genetic sequence actually doesn't change. You get 50% from mom, 50% from dad, unless you're doing some crazy gene editing type of things. So epigenetics is just, hey, how can we actually modify those genes, whether that be through lifestyle, whether it be through supplements, medications, or procedural based therapies.
Interesting. So it's kind of like, you have a set biology, but you also have the option to tailor your biology based off of your environment, your life choices, kind of. It's like, I was doing a little research, and it's kind of like your genes are kind of like the pre-built, I guess, hardware, and then once you start making changes in your life, that changes the way that your genes are expressed. I'm just trying to make sure I'm kind of following.
No, exactly right. And I'm glad you said the word hardware too. So think of your genetics as the hardware, like for any laptop, computer, what have you. And then the software is actually the epigenetics. So the epigenetics is controlling kind of that hardware. So yeah, we're looking at how we're turning genes on or how we're turning genes off. So that's one way to look at it. A lot of people think of it as like a light switch, like a dimmer. So how much are these genes being expressed? And it's kind of like that nature versus nurture too, because the nature is going to be your genetics. Again, it doesn't change. That's very, so stable it doesn't change. And then your nurture is actually going to be those epigenetics. So what epi-nutrients or what things can we do from, again, more of a lifestyle perspective to actually help maybe change that nature if we weren't given the best genetics from our family?
Sure. Yeah, like you might hear a lot of people with the people I've grown up with, or in general, who are like, yeah, oh, I have this problem, but it's genetic. And it's like, well, sure, that's half true. And I heard you say on Nate's episode where it's like, maybe 40% is your genetic pre-built code, and the rest 60% is kind of your lifestyle habits and choices. And so it's like, I feel like people have a limiting view of, like, sometimes they blame their genetics when in reality they have more power than they really realize. And I think that's what's so amazing about this whole topic, is that we actually are given the control to make our lives better. No matter how horrible the scenario you were born into, most of the time with the right attitude and the right habits, you're able to improve and grow and get past some kinds of, diseases and risks.
Yeah, no, I mean,
which I find awesome.
That's exactly right. So, for example, one statistic, there's a lot of them that refers to epigenetics. One right off the top of my head is for every 1 year that your biological age is increased compared to your chronological age, you actually have a 4% increased risk for developing some type of cardiovascular related event or kind of outcome, symptomatic outcome. So that's very powerful. We do not want any of our biological age kind of based outcomes or epigenetics to be shifted in more of a negative fashion, because that's going to be related to worse outcomes. So you do hear a lot of those, again, trend words or phrases like "you're not your DNA," your DNA's, not your destiny, food is medicine, you are what you eat. And all of those are completely true, right? That's exactly what we're talking about right now. And I just think that's super powerful because you can build your lifestyle. You can build your habits brick by brick to directly correlate with how you're aging, and maybe to help, I think that the end goal here, why are we talking about this in the first place, is you want to increase not only your lifespan, which is how long you've actually been on this planet, but your health span as well. So you want to be healthy for those last years of your life. That is really the main goal.
For sure. I guess for you personally, what habits have you implemented into your life that decrease your biological aging, increase your epigenetic, I can't even figure out the right words there, but what habits have you implemented?
Yeah, I think the right word there is, and again, someone actually told me this, and I took it from them, but shifting your epigenetic methylation markers in your favor is what I like to say, because some genes we want turned on and some genes we want turned off. It's not really, turning off everything is good or turning on everything is good. So it's a really healthy balance. And when it comes to me and my lifestyle, I'm a naturally stressed out person. I always have been. I can't remember, I guess, when I wasn't. So, this acute stress probably here and there, but definitely building up from the past. So definitely probably have some chronic stress leading to inflammation and other outcomes. So I really like to focus on reducing my stress levels. There is a large component with your psychosocial analyses and epigenetics. So there have been a lot of studies looking at things like relaxation responses, so breath work and breathing exercises, even meditation done even through things like hot yoga. So I'm a huge advocate for any type of stress reduction methodology. And it's going to differ person to person, right? What works for me may not work for you, Harley. So
sure,
whatever does it for you. Reading, writing, walking, stretching. I don't know, maybe you like to go hiking or, mountain biking, do something a little bit more dangerous to get rid of some of those stressors. So
sure.
That's a really large one. I have been also supplementing with DHEA. So that is going to be a hormone regulating compound. It's basically going to lower those cortisol levels. So your cortisol is going to be your stress hormone. Once we lower those cortisol levels, we've actually seen in turn directly that is going to be directly correlated with lowering biological age outcomes as well. So women in particular, if you want to get into the specifics, can get away with doing, a lower dosing. You want to be aware of some of those hormonal-based side effects you may get, increased acne. Don't take too much. You may get some, again, more increased hair loss, things like that. Men can typically get away with 25 milligrams, 50 milligrams of DHA, but always start out slower. I'm definitely not a healthcare provider, so make sure to consult with your healthcare provider if you're looking to take any of these methodologies upon yourself.
Interesting. You said DHA?
DHEA. Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, and that lowers cortisol. And yeah, I've kind of done some research on, the biohacking methods on how, when you increase your stress, in some sense, you become more stress resilient. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if this ties in any way, this is lowering cortisol. I'm really not a scientist in this sense. I'm just still trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
How does it connect with biohacking? Yeah.
Yeah. So, you want to have a little bit of stress, right? No stress. If you don't have any stress, it's like you don't have any morals, because you're kind of just, going with the flow, or who cares about this? Who cares about that? You may not have any goals in life. So a little bit of stress is good, right? It's that acute stress that we kind of want from time to time. However, what we don't want is going to be that chronic stress buildup. So that chronic stress is going to be, you can't shut maybe your 9 to 5 off, or you're dreaming about certain stressors you're thinking about in the shower, and then it kind of takes off it kind of takes over your entire life. You start taking maybe some of that stress out on your friends or on your family, so then it actually interrupts your relationships, and quality relationships are really essential in longevity-based medicine as well, which we can talk about a little bit further. So there's really this I should say, cascading event once you interrupt kind of your stress and increase those stress levels. That's going to cause a lot of oxidative stress inside the body. It's going to cause a lot of inflammation, and that's going to be representative of this epigenetic testing, of maybe your typical hormonal testing you'll go get from a lab provider, or a complete blood count, which will have different lab values that will be able to tell you other insights about your health.
Interesting. I guess when was the first time you tested your epigenetics, and what got you interested in the entire field as a whole?
Oh yeah, this is a good question. So I test mine regularly. That's for sure.
Oh, really?
I would say the first time I probably ever tested was when we opened, which would have been back in July of 2020. So we're True Diagnostic is 3 years old now, which is super exciting. We've tested about 30,000 patients to date. Again, most of those patients are coming from these healthcare providers in an integrative functional medicine space. But I really became interested in this in August of 2019 when it was first proven that we could reverse these biological ages. So that study came out, and that really prompted us to open True Diagnostic. To give you a little bit of insight into that study, it's called the TRIM trial, TRIM, by Dr. Greg Fay, and they actually took 9 men, and they were kind of looking to regenerate the thymus for better immune system thymic aging. Biological aging happened to be one of those biomarkers that they just measured alongside of it, and they actually used what we just talked about, the DHEA. They used growth hormone, and they used metformin as well. So with those 3 compounds, we saw that age reversal. And I mean, Harley, I remember seeing that paper and how drastically this was going to change the world of functional medicine. I mean, you can't get on, social media now without seeing, at least for me, it's because it's probably targeted, but epigenetics, biological age, something relating back to aging and longevity. So we're really going through this epigenetic revolution, and I truly believe it's going to be the best in class biomarker for any type of diagnostic testing in the next decade.
Wow, that's really cool. And I was kind of excited to test my epigenetics, and it said something. I kind of want to dive into the topic of like extrinsic versus intrinsic versus chronological. Like chronologically, I'm 22, but it said my intrinsic age was like 29 and my extrinsic was like 25. But I'm trying to figure out, like, how would you define each one of those, and what do those mean for me or anyone?
Yeah, so we give you a lot of results, as you probably noticed. But we do this on purpose. We want to over-educate people. We want to tell them exactly what these outcomes mean and have conversations like this, because if not, we're missing a piece of the puzzle, and we're aging in all of these different ways. So, to define intrinsic and extrinsic as a category, these are historical-based biological aging processes. So, Harley, this basically means how have you been aging since your inception up until now? So it's this accumulation of aging over time. It's like compounded interest. So for that intrinsic epigenetic age, let's start there. That is going to be your baseline fundamental biological aging process. So this is like your true age by True Diagnostic. We do typically tend to see people be older intrinsically, both men and women, men more than women. We see men typically be like anywhere from 3 to 6 years older intrinsically. We know men typically, again, age quicker compared to women just generally, and they die younger. It's the sex paradox that we've known about for quite a while. So those results that you mentioned in terms of your personal ones, I would say that's very typical. What I'd encourage you to do, since you have that report, I'm assuming right in front of you, is look at where you are compared to the rest of our population on that average trend line. So, you're probably doing a little bit better than people even your same chronological age group, which is great. That's what we want to see. And keep in mind, that's our population. So that's 30,000 people who've taken our test who are very, very healthy. It's the best of the best when you're putting yourself up against them.
Yeah, it's saying like I'm towards the lowest part of the trend line, which I guess is good because, like you're saying, maybe healthy people choose to take this test. I was just kind of surprised. I was like, wow, biologically it says I'm 7 years older than my real age. And I always thought, I'm kind of a healthy guy. I'm, huge into cardio, HIIT, and fitness and diet and all the things. And but like you're saying, maybe that's not a bad thing to be 7 years intrinsically older.
Yeah. No, definitely the trend we see. And from an epidemiological perspective, we absolutely see what makes these clocks tick. A lot of the really famous clocks actually agree in what makes them accelerate. So those really, really strong correlations. Again, not necessarily a causation, but they differ in their size. So again, things that make the intrinsic epigenetic age tick are male sex, BMI, things like HIV infection, metabolic syndrome, frailty, low socioeconomic status, low education level, even things like smoking, tobacco, cigarettes, alcohol consumption, physical activity. So there are other things we absolutely know that are associated with it. Again, none of those may apply to you, Harley, as you're thinking like, what the heck? How, why does this happen? So we usually also point out anything that may have happened in your childhood as well, right? You're so young chronologically, but some things could have happened that we're not even aware about, which could shift those epigenetic methylation markers, right? So that's the frustration that we get a lot of times for the intrinsic and extrinsic epigenetic age, and why we actually have the Dunedin Pace value down there too, which I'm sure we'll get to.
Sure, yeah. So you kind of explained the intrinsic, which is kind of like, I guess, your true biological age in some sense. Maybe not the best way of putting it, but how would you describe extrinsic age?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that similar?
Yeah, so extrinsic, again, is similar in the fact that it's a historical-based biological aging process. However, this is actually going to be synonymous with the age of your immune system. So this is looking at how your immune cells are changing as you get older chronologically. So as we get older chronologically, Harley, we actually have more zombie-like cells in our body. Kind of
senescent.
Exactly, senescent cells.
Okay.
Yeah, we get more, natural killer cells as we become older, but they're less effective. So they're kind of a waste of space. They help fight infection. And then we even get less like differentiated cells, less new cells, less stem cells as we become older. So point being, these cells are always changing as we get older, so we need a way to quantify how that's affecting our biological age. So extrinsic epigenetic age is the age of your immune system.
Interesting. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, there's some stats in here which we could maybe go in, but you were talking about this Dunedin Pace value, which is kind of like the biological years per year. And
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I got a value of 0.78, which seems pretty good, I guess.
Wow, that is really good. I bet you're way below the average trend line too. So this is good. I would have been a little bit worried, Harley, if your Dunedin Pace was, closer to 1 or above 1. So this pace of aging is saying, hey, I don't care how you've lived your life beforehand. At this current time point, how fast are you aging? So it's like a speedometer, right? So you said yours was 0.78, is that correct?
Yeah.
So you're aging at the time you took this test, 0.78 biological years for every 1 chronological year. So that's awesome. You definitively have had maybe some historical based aging. Again, we don't know quite yet why, but what you're doing right now from, again, a physical fitness standpoint, you said, from eating healthy, is actually working to reverse your overall biological age. And that's really powerful. I would say the Dunedin Pace is the gold standard, period, for measuring the effectiveness of interventions as it relates to aging.
Wow, that's really cool. It maybe one day, like, the curve of chronological and biological can cross, especially if my rate is lower than 1. Maybe one day I will be 35, but my biological age will be 34.
Exactly.
Who knows?
Yeah, no, you're exactly right there. So we have even, kind of a competition going on. I don't know if you've seen anything about the Rejuvenation Olympics or Brian Johnson on the media, but it's I want to maybe bring this up if you don't mind, because your Dunedin Pace is so good. So we set up, it's literally called rejuvenationolympics.com, where we measure 3 Dunedin Pace scores. And that's all you need to be able to make it hopefully on this leaderboard. And the first and third tests have to be at least 6 months apart. So it's not about like I'm really excited you have a low Dunedin Pace, Harley, but my challenge to you is, can you get it even lower, right? Because that's what matters is, hey, can you get it lower, or can you sustain being at that 0.78, which will still be very, very impressive. So, we paired up with Brian Johnson, who is a serial entrepreneur and really into the longevity biohacking space. He's the man that has, spent over $200 million on his health. And,
okay. I see.
You've probably,
I know who you're talking about now, yeah.
So what he's doing is really exciting, though, because everything's public. So if people want to try different things, they can go to his website. It's like blueprint.brianjohnson.something. I don't know if you Google it, it'll come up. But I would like to see you on there just because yours is already so good. And you're so young chronologically. So, again, I bet you're way below that average trend line.
Yeah, quite a bit.
Yeah. Something
What's
you
the
should
lowest?
be proud of. And we need to know what you're doing. Like, we need to know your regimen and
Oh,
routine.
maybe. Yeah, I could explain it. I'm curious though. What's the lowest pace you've seen?
Yes. So this is an interesting question. I just interviewed Dr. Daniel Belsky from Columbia University on my podcast talking about this because I get this question all the time. Hey, can you go below 0.6, right? That's the lowest you can go for your audience listening. 0.6 to 1.4 is the scale. This study to create the Dunedin Pace took place in Dunedin, New Zealand. That's why it's called that weird name. So with Dan Belsky's answer, because he's the bioinformaticist behind the creation of this algorithm, that population only provided us with the window between 0.6 and 1.4. If we studied, and the New Zealanders, they're a pretty healthy population. If we maybe studied a population in like the blue zone diets, maybe we could get, you know, a Dunedin Pace that's a little bit even lower. Like maybe that scale could be at 0.5. So the lowest for like the context of this conversation that I've seen is, you know, 0.60. You can get a little bit lower with some bioinformatic normalization pipeline changes, but 0.6.
Interesting. Yeah, it's like I've been training for triathlons for the past bit. When I took the test, I was like mid through these triathlon trainings, pretty much not eating. Well, like I never drink alcohol or pop. It's pretty much just water and vegetables, meat, fruit, kind of. That's pretty much it. And then just train tons of cardio and tons of saunaing and cold plunging, and that's kind of, I guess, the regimen that I'm on.
Yeah.
I think my sleep might be my worst thing. I need to like tap in and get better sleep more consistently. I kind of stay up and research and work a lot into the night. That's probably my biggest downfall, but you know, there's opportunity to improve.
Exactly. Yeah. Opportunity to improve. Are you tracking your sleep by chance?
No.
Yeah. That's
How would you recommend doing that?
So you could do it with like a Whoop, like a watch.
Okay.
Or like an Aura ring. I was never a wearable person. I kind of got asked and like was gifted this Whoop. It's really cool though.
Sure.
I feel like with all the research you do and like, you know, how curious you are and how great your podcast is, you would probably love it. And I would say, the more I hear about the wearables, the less people like the Aura ring, especially if you're lifting weights, just because it's a little clunky and might get in the way. But I know the Whoop does a program where you can like try it for free for like 30 days or something. So you could always sign up, see if you like it. If not, return it, be done with it, try something else. But the sleep tracking part, I think, is very, very informative. And maybe it's not as bad as you thought it was. Maybe you just need to get in bed earlier, or, you know,
That's probably right.
Yeah. So I'd be curious once you optimize sleep to see where your Dunedin Pace is.
Yeah, like I guess I do have a Samsung fitness watch.
Yeah.
It does track sleep. I always just charge it at night. I should just keep it on and charge it in the morning or something along those lines.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm gonna start doing that. I just wrote that down as a reminder. It's pretty cool.
Just use that to start, and then at least, you know, that gives you something to follow up on.
Yeah, like what are the main metrics of sleep that you're meaning? Like you're talking like how long you sleep, the quality of sleep, and whatnot. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, for sure. By no means a sleep expert whatsoever, but you absolutely, you absolutely want to look at your quantity sleep, I would say, is number one, right? Not everyone needs like 8 or 9 hours of sleep. I know some people who are fully fueled on 6 hours of sleep, right? So maybe that's all you need, but maybe you aim for 7 if you're starting to feel groggy. You also want to look at the different sleep cycles you're going through. So REM sleep, your rapid eye movement, you want a good chunk of REM sleep, and you want a good chunk of deep sleep as well. So just check your watch and see if it measures kind of those different stages, and then how long you're in those different stages too.
Sure, will do. And then the next thing on this report is the telomere length, which I've heard of telomeres before. I did a research paper on biohacking like 2 years ago, which was kind of cool, but like it says my telomere length is 7.8 kilobase units, which I guess it says is pretty long compared to some.
Yeah, what percentile? Oh, nice.
94th or something.
Cool. Yeah, so this is our last age-related report. I would say if your listeners are familiar with any type of kind of longevity test or biological aging test, it's probably telomeres. I will let those people know right now, this is our least favorite test.
Sure.
Just because it's been outdated. And there's
Okay.
some papers, really, really great kind of review papers saying, hey, telomeres have been around for a very, very long time, but they are outdated. They just aren't related to many outcomes. So, you know, what you want to look at is the percentile. When I heard 7.8 kilobases, I go, that seems long for our testing, but I'm not sure. Let me know the percentile. So since you're in a higher percentile, Harley, you have basically less risk for any type of cardiac related event, and you have less senescent cells compared to people of your same chronological age group. So, I mean, 94th percentile is, you know, really, really good. So we kind of put the cutoff in the 20th percentile. So if you are in the 20th percentile or lower, you have more senescent cells. You might want to take some type of senolytic therapy to clear those out, get rid of shorter telomeres, and increase your average telomere length.
Sure. Yeah, I'm curious, what are some, if someone wanted to, this wouldn't be what they wanted to do, but if they wanted to increase their Dunedin Pace all the way up to 1.4, what would be like the top 3 things not to do? Like what do you see as like correlatory with increasing that pace value?
Yeah, well, if you're I guess if you're a female, get pregnant.
Okay, really?
Number one. Yeah.
Wow.
The thing is, though, that ends up, you know, going back down after pregnancy. But
interesting.
Increased stress, you know, pregnancy being a stress, severe COVID-19 being a stress, unelected surgeries being a stress. So, you know, that's kind of the thing, number one, not to do. Don't get stressed out. Number 2, and I might switch this actually with number 1, eat 10,000 calories a day. That will absolutely speed up your aging process and make those calories really bad calories as well. So, you know, increase your carbohydrates, increase, you know, all of those bad fats, eat a lot of those artificial flavorings and sugar sweetened beverages, right? It's weird saying this in the opposite way. So I like this question.
Heck
and then, don't move your body. Don't do anything. Sit in the same spot for, you know, 24 hours a day and watch a screen. Make your eyes bleed, you know? So those things would probably be, by far my top 3 do not recommend.
Sure. Yeah, I kind of was guessing them, but I was like, might as well ask the expert just in case.
Yeah.
Like I've, you know, interviewed sleep expert, genetics, and like a lot of the time it's still a common theme of like, well, you are in control, and if you do X, Y, and Z, you'll totally improve your health, even just a few % a day in some sense. Like just keep improving and keep moving, you know. Whether it be diet, sleep, exercise is like the 3 pillars. But yeah, you mentioned stress, which is kind of interesting. You're saying like being stressed is actually quite like unhelpful for your biological age pace. That's so interesting to me.
Yeah. That study I referenced in particular is actually done by Dr. Jesse Poganik, and he's out of Harvard University at Vadim Gladishev's lab, who is, I would say, definitely an expert in aging. So the study's really nice. I think it's literally called Biological Age is Increased Upon Stress and Restored Upon Recovery is the exact title. But it's a really nice read because they kind of bring all of these other aspects, you know, all of these different stressors from outside and combine it into one really nice flowing paper. So definitely recommend that one. But that's the beauty of these epigenetic methylation markers is, hey, we no longer have the excuse to say I have this type of disease or I'm at increased risk because of my genes, because of my parents and grandparents. It's about, hey, I know I can have my biological aging increase off of different stressors or different things, but ultimately I'm in control. I can actually reverse that and even maybe improve it from other healthy lifestyle factors too. So like you mentioned, Harley, it's all about those habitual lifestyle changes. It's more about, hey, what can we make our life over time? And I'm definitely not perfect in that realm. You know, I have a huge sweet tooth. I love Diet Coke every now and then, right? I'll stay up too late or not get enough sleep. So you just have to be doing most of the things correct on most days to have a healthy outcome. Sure.
Yeah, that's well said. Yeah, I heard one of my friends who's also pretty into health, he was talking about Peter Attia on how, like, you know, he was saying like, well, what do you want to be doing for the last 10 years of your life in some sense? It's like, what, for those last 10 years, do you want to be sitting in a chair, unable to play with your great-great-grandchildren, you know,
Yeah.
having no energy? It's like, sometimes it's kind of unfortunate to play that long game because people don't want to view themselves as old, but it's like, I like to do that all the time and say, Harley of 90, what do you want to be doing? How do you want to feel? And I just,
I like
just
that.
keep asking that question, which is,
I like that approach. That's really good. And I actually talk about that a lot. So what I do on a day-to-day basis is pretty much speak with my healthcare providers who use our true diagnostic testing and teach them even kind of the why. Like, why should people care about this in the first place, right? If they can't convince patients, then, if your own healthcare provider can't convince you, who else can? So, I actually tell them to play on that you were just talking about. Ask them why they came to see you in the first place. Why are they at a longevity doctor? Why are they not going to see their general practitioners and for 5 minutes, because you only get like 5 minutes face to face with your GP, and that, I think, changes a lot of their almost like marketing or sales strategy, because if you start to ask people their why, you get into their story, you understand them from a more personal level, and then maybe it is that they want to see their grandchildren. I always say, hey, if the opportunity arose when I'm 80 or 90 years old that I want to start a new business, right? I want to be able to start a new business. I want to be able to walk my dog. I love animals. I love my dog, right?
Yeah,
I want to be able to walk my dog. So, it actually makes me so happy to see older individuals chronologically outside walking their dogs, right? A lot of times people can't even go and leave their house and do something like that. So again, going back to your why, that really drives your health span, your increase in health span, those healthy years at the end of your life, your reasoning, and even having purpose and reasoning in life.
Oh yeah,
those individuals are actually on average supposed to live 7 years longer and have more healthy years at the end of their life.
Man, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because I kind of wanted to ask about the impact of having either a religion, B, a community that's kind of like deep, or like a family-oriented community, or a church community, or a purpose, or like I've heard from a neuroscientist that said like the people that feel more in tune with their purpose and maybe have a deeper relationship with A, God, or B, whatever else they might believe in, they have better neurological health. I can't even describe what kind of health. But I was curious how this impacts epigenetics, religion / God / church / community.
Yeah, I mean, it all does. Even, Harley, the way we talk to ourselves, like the thoughts, the way we process it, right? So if you're someone, I'll answer your question here in a second more directly.
Sure.
But if you're someone who, why'd you do that? Or, oh my gosh, you made a mistake. Or why'd you just say that? Why didn't you do this, right? That negative kind of cycle of thinking, you're going to have a negative expression on your genes. You're going to get more stressed out. It's going to go through that cascading event we kind of talked about at the beginning of this episode. Whereas if you're someone who talks in a positive fashion, hey, good job, or hey, you made a mistake, but it's okay. Get over it. You'll do better next time. Like, you're going to feel better. You're not going to get as angry. You're not going to get upset. You're going to go the complete opposite way. And being surrounded by a supportive community that is okay with, failures and okay with picking you back up, that's all part of it. So like you said, whether it's a belief system with God or some other type of religion, or you have a community or just support, that is completely necessary, I think, to get through this life, right? We're all going through our own challenges and our own stuff. So to have people by you that you're able to vent to, that you're able to talk to, and that you're able to trust, has proven to have beneficial effects on your health. I know I mentioned also the blue zones a little bit earlier as well. So I forget, I just read something about it this weekend. I forget the name of the person who identified these blue zones off the top of my head, but they're literally called blue zones because he circled them with a blue marker on a map. So that's why they're called blue zones, but they're these areas where these groups of people tend to live way longer. I'm talking, they're healthy going into their hundreds, 110s, et cetera. And one of the biggest drivers of why is researchers think they have a better community and they have quality relationships. Of course, along with, quote unquote, those longevity genes, a better diet, a very low stress life. But the community is a massive part of that.
Yeah, that's really cool to see because honestly, it's unfortunate. Ever since COVID, it seems like people are way less in communities than before. Maybe their communities on their phone, but that's not a
Yeah.
real community in the same way. But it kind of has showed me like, make sure that your circle, I'm talking to myself, make sure my circle is, solid, supportive, etc. And yeah, I really do
Yeah.
feel like that's important. Like, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no. I like that you brought this up, and this is really interesting. I saw this tweet the other day. I forget who sent it to me, but it was, hey, make sure you have a good amount of like. It was a weird analogy. It was like, make sure you have a good amount of treadmill friends versus like couch friends. Basically meaning, hey, have you heard of this? Like, maybe?
No, but I'm just trying to think
Okay.
it through.
So after you hang out, and I'm sure someone's going to come to mind right after I say this, because people came to mind in terms of my friend group after I read it. You have these friends who afterwards, they just energize you so much. They give you all these good ideas and stuff that you just want to run on a treadmill afterwards. However, you also have that group of friends who they drain you so much that you just want to sit on a couch afterwards. So it was talking about like, what is this called? Why do we have this feeling? Like they couldn't even give this a name. But it was this idea that, hey, you need to have a good amount of those treadmill friends versus those couch friends, because you can't always be, ramped up after those conversations and wanting to do more, but you can't also be drained after those conversations. So you have to have a healthy medium. And I don't know, love to hear your thoughts about that.
Yeah, that's really well said. Yeah, you can almost feel the energy of some people. Like you said, it might be good and bad because you want to be energized. But if you're energized all the time and, it's late and you need to fall asleep, you don't always want to be insanely energized. You sometimes want to have a relaxation time that is a de-stressor. But yeah, I totally agree. Like I typically lean towards people that are more treadmill-like because I am a treadmill guy who's always moving, new ideas,
Exactly.
passionate about something, and I like surrounding myself with people that are really passionate about their dreams, goals, ideas, and so yeah, like I think it's a good balance, but I have certainly leaned towards more treadmill style people using that analogy.
I think I do too, and you know what, you remembered me. You reminded me of something from the tweet that was they did call it some type of energy. They weren't able to explain it, but there's like this transfer, right, of energy between people. I definitely lead more toward the treadmill because again, I like to be on the go. I like to learn new things, but I think it's important that maybe with your treadmill friends that you can turn it more to the couch friends, right? Like know when to shut it off. Like, okay, hey, let's do this mindless activity and I don't know, go play bocce and like talk about life or something else, right? Like you can make that transition with that group of friends if you're, close enough.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's well said. Yeah, I'm kind of curious. Like in your bio, you say something like how exploring the science to improve your happiness, diet, fitness, sex, and more. And I'm kind of a guy who, I actually help people quit from watching porn, which sounds kind of crazy, but I found it to be something that I struggled with a lot. But I was curious, like, what do you mean? How does epigenetics impact sex? And I'm also curious, like, what do you think porn watching does to someone's epigenetics? I don't know. You may have never had this question before, but I'm just curious.
Never had this question. But yeah, I've watched like your episodes and some of your videos and stuff. So I know that you definitely speak on this subject. So from a sex perspective, the interventional trials definitely haven't been done, right? I think one that maybe you could do more of like a survey-based trial with, kind of seeing sexual encounters and whatnot. But and we've done some of that metadata analysis actually in our True Diagnostic cohort. And those who actually say that they increase their sexual frequency with whatever type of partner actually have better epigenetic aging outcomes. So we probably think, again, that's a very uncontrolled correlation I just made right there. So I want everyone to take that with a grain of salt. But what we can think back to, and all the studies about sex, and again, feeling close to your partner, and again, it's probably with, I would assume, results, epigenetic methylation results would be better if you had, one partner or a couple very close partners rather than a lot of partners with, varying levels of sexual activity. But I think that's what it comes down to, is what we were just talking about, is more of that intimate connection, right? To have sex with your partner, to have sex, very frequently with your partner, because the closer that you can be with that one person, or again, however you live your sexual life, then probably the better. And, in terms of porn, I don't know.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I'll leave it at that. I don't know.
That's fine.
Again, and I'd like to hear, your thoughts on that as well, or maybe like your hypothesis, since I think you have like more experience with the research and stuff in that space. Probably bad, right?
Yeah, well, that's my guess, hypothesis, because sometimes it's almost like porn is kind of like a stress response, or it's kind of similar to like smoking cigarettes. People are stressed out, so then it's a coping mechanism. But in reality, the cigarette or the porn doesn't actually de-stress you over the longer period of time. It actually is just kind of like, it raises your dopamine level and then decreases it down past baseline, or so you feel even worse after. And so it's like you're adding more stress to your life that isn't necessary, and you're also training your brain to choose cheap mechanisms for coping versus the real good mechanisms, such as, going for a run, eating something nutritious, going for a walk with your dog, any of those things. So it's just kind of like, I was just curious because you were talking a lot about how stress is really not a good thing in regards to epigenetics. And while porn watching is kind of something that people use as a mechanism to remove stress, but it's a double-edged sword because it like adds more stress within 5 minutes. So it's like, I was like, I've noticed when I was addicted, I felt a lot more stressed and a lot less happy in a lot of ways. So I don't know. I was just curious because, but that's my hypothesis, that it might increase stress.
I mean, I agree with you on all fronts with everything that you just said. I think it's a temporary fix, right? A temporary solution. When people get really stressed out and they eat a bunch of food, it's the same thing. They just are choosing a different methodology and choosing to watch porn. So I think it's, just kind of putting a bandage over the initial issue, right? And then kind of, feeling that you're doing something that maybe is a little bit more taboo can even lead to like further stress, right? Or like hiding it from a partner, or, that can get, I guess, a little bit more deeper than what we're talking about now. But I do think it's an issue, obviously, if you're not dealing with your stress in probably other healthy ways, to be able to release it and to have an outlet of that, whether it's doing something like going on a run, that of course is free, or it could be going to see a therapist, right?
Oh,
I think,
for sure.
Again, therapy has a huge taboo around it. I think everyone should go to therapy.
Same.
Right?
Totally.
To just talk.
Yeah.
You don't even have to talk about anything. You just go and, it may be hard finding a therapist, right? I think a lot of people have issues with that. But it's kind of like dating but you're paying to date someone essentially. But I swear, once you find someone that you like, you will be very thankful that you started that journey.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. You go to a therapist?
Yeah.
Like, does it help you?
Yeah, absolutely. Even, therapy, like, again, you may not need therapy or think that you need therapy, but even these little tiny stressors that just build up, work stress, relationship stress. Did I do this right? Did I do that right? And I'm talking about relationships with, your inner child or your parents or significant other, whoever, right? I have a therapist. I love her. I've been, seeing her for years now, and she's great. So, I definitely recommend anyone who's on the fence to try it out.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've been going for 2 years. Honestly, my therapist, he reminds me of a deep, close friend, even though, paying for a friend in some ways. But yeah, you're right. There's so many small stressors in life, and hanging around with a lot of guys, I noticed a lot of guys like keep their stress inside. Oh, I'm a tough man. I don't need to open up about my feelings. And I'm like, well, you're actually looking at this pace thing and epigenetics. It's like, well, maybe you're aging yourself in a way that you aren't even understanding, and you're probably not. This is not healthy for you just overall. And I'm like, I'm a huge fan of opening up and explaining about your stresses to other people.
No.
ties in with the community that we're talking about, everything like that. So yeah,
exactly. Yeah, a lot of that masculine, feminine. I'm not going to say it right. You get what I'm trying to say. Masculine, femininity. I can't say the word.
That's
but,
okay.
Yes, I think, and maybe, I don't know, I'm just going to throw this out there, that is the sex paradox. That's why we see men age faster, right?
Oh,
again, we're not
interesting.
seeing a lot of that masculine type of energy, I think, as we, hopefully not, as the years start to go by, and again, therapy is becoming less of a taboo, and we're open about, all these things. So maybe we end up seeing that shift sometime where men and women actually live to be the same age, right? It's really weird that women, when, we birth children, that is like the worst positive feedback loop that you could ever perform for your body. So women who are even are going through that, like 10 times,
wow.
Men still die or, age quicker compared to that.
Man,
women.
That's crazy.
So it really is crazy. There's something else about, men that I don't think we quite know about yet, but maybe that adds to it. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, hopefully people listening got to open up, man or woman. But yeah, I have, I guess, a few more questions for you.
Yeah.
What do you feel like is the most significant discovery or development in the field of epigenetics to date? Or maybe the most recent thing that you've thought to be very interesting, or maybe the most impactful study? Like, I'm just curious.
Yeah. So this is a very timely question. So True Diagnostic, we just got done with our 3-year clinical trial that we've been doing for Harvard ever since we've been open. And we actually created the world's first ever multi-omic biological age clock, where we actually combine their metabolite values, their protein values, their clinical values, or the phenomics, so, their outcomes, all by using epigenetics. So using epigenetics as a surrogate marker. So again, just think of epigenetics as a biomarker. It's not just aging. Like if we only reported out aging outcomes as a company, we have failed. That's old news. Aging is over, right? We need to be able to look at what else can we predict through epigenetic testing. And the reason this is so groundbreaking is because you need a very, very small sample, right? 1 blood spot card. It is going to be very, very cheap in the future as this testing becomes more available to people. And the turnaround time is very quickly, and the methodology by which we do it allows for it to be cheap and allows for that quick turnaround. So I truly think it is the biomarker of the future. It's going to take over about 60 to 70% of all of the medical testing that we see being done today. So, best discovery so far, our trial that we just got done with Harvard. We haven't released anything about that yet, so that's brand stinking new. But as a field, just the ability for epigenetics to predict almost anything and act as a surrogate marker is an understatement. I don't think people really believe the trajectory that epigenetics is following at this time. Sure.
You say surrogate marker. What do you mean by surrogate? I don't even fully know.
Yeah. No, this is great. So epigenetics, as long as you pair that epigenetic data up with anything, you can use epigenetics to predict that. So, if we had, I'll just give like a simple example. If we had 1,000 men and women and we took their epigenetics at the same time we took their testosterone levels, we could actually then ask our machine learning system to predict testosterone levels by just looking at epigenetics. So we can now say, okay, Harley, we already have your epigenetic data file, right? Because you did the True Diagnostic testing. We have a new algorithm that can predict your testosterone. Do you want us to run that algorithm on that data, right? So by surrogate, I mean, it is going to be the outcome that we look at.
Sure. Yeah, that's really cool. What do you think, who are your biggest competitors in the sense, the genetics test, other blood tests, what other kind of tests do you feel like are also improving, or do you really think epigenetics is the best? I'm just thinking.
Yeah, no, this is a great question. So when we started the company, we didn't know, right? We went in with a blind eye. We said, we hope epigenetics is it. We can only try. So we bet, everything on this, right? That
Sure.
Well, we knew epigenetics was really good at aging, right? So we actually, ran with that at first. But now, because of the study, we're seeing it be able to do a lot more. So yeah, this was a multi-million-dollar study. So we did put a lot of resources here and a lot of time. So We really, I would say, do not have another competitive marker in the omics space, meaning kind of our, you have your genomics, your epigenomics, metabolites, proteomics, transcriptomics. There are some other like biomarkers we could use for prediction. Transcriptomics, I would say, was up there for a while, but the reason I know we're going to be okay is because actually our Cornell collaborators came to visit a couple weeks ago. They're infectious disease specialists, and they've said that, the majority of their colleagues at the university and most people in the infectious disease space are now transitioning from transcriptomics to epigenetics and epigenomics. They truly think that is where it starts and where we can pick up a signature and where we can actually start to understand not only the correlation, but the causation for a lot of diseases, outcomes, and maybe even aging too.
Dang, that's interesting.
Yeah. So some exciting stuff coming.
Yeah, that really is. Yeah, that's interesting. It's cool that I was able to get a DNA test from Tyler Pansner and an epigenetics test from you and kind of combine them and analyze my lifestyle. And it's most people probably don't have that kind of data, or at least, you of course do, but like a lot of people might not. But it's like you never know what you're going to learn just by testing yourself. And
well, you're exactly right. And obviously I'm obsessed with everything epigenetics, but I will be the first to tell you the more data, the better. So Harley, if you, I don't know if you did like a full consultation with Tyler, but if you do, you understand your genes and what works best for your genes, that's only going to help your epigenetics more too. Yeah. I actually encourage my healthcare providers to do both a genetic panel and an epigenetic panel. I really do. Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah, that genetics panel showed me a lot of what to avoid, what to keep doing, and maybe because I did that 7-8 months ago and I was following that really rigorously, then maybe the epigenetics that I took showed that's maybe why I have a lower score, or like a good low score in some ways. But yeah, it's honestly really cool. And where do you feel like the field of epigenetics is heading in the next 5 to 10 years? Like what do you see happening in the future for this?
Oh, everywhere. Truly everywhere. As it relates to, maybe let me bring it back to my company and like our goals is we will always be offering the best biological age testing to our healthcare provider network and to consumers as well. So that will always stay put. We'll always have that commercial offering. I think where this is going to go is you're going to start to just see it build and build and build. So we're working with a company right now actually where we're doing all of their processing and kind of reporting and making it a really turnkey platform for them. But basically they are creating this app for women who are pregnant. And based on your epigenetic methylation markers, we can predict if the women will have a preterm birth or how, what their risk of postpartum depression is, right? So they can actually take action toward that. So we're going to start to see this in different outcomes in different fields. And I think as it relates to True Diagnostic, I really hope we start to, I can see that we're starting to be able to take over that space and kind of offer almost like a turnkey, more like, business to business based testing for other companies, not necessarily just healthcare providers in those kits.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, like maybe 7 years down the road, 5 years down the road, when I am debating having kids, I can have my wife analyze her epigenetic markers or methodations. I can't even say the word, but then, I'm going to I wrote that down, like, when I'm deciding one day, look into epigenetics, see what that can show us, because that seems kind of really awesome.
Well, a lot of work in epigenetics and sperm quality, right? You can basically look at epigenetics in sperm and you can see different increased risk, whether it be increased risk for autism or, other types of diseases, what have you. And a lot of work also in like preconception, always a ton of work in fertility in particular. And then even, during conception and post-conception as well. So it's just a booming field. It's so exciting.
How does one get their fertility tested?
Yeah, I don't think it's available yet. So like a lot of this stuff is still research-based. So there's my answer to your question. Where do I see this going in the next 5 to 10 years? Commercialization, application. I think, to put it simple, is, hey, a lot of this is research-based. a lot of it is already created by these researchers. A lot of the researchers don't have experience with commercialization. So it has to be picked up by, companies like True Diagnostic or someone else that wants to be able to offer this and is, confidently able to market it too.
Sure. Yeah, it's really exciting to see. I'll be keeping my eye out, but I'll honestly just be following you for any updates, and maybe I'll send you a DM and say anything new that I should know about, or I'll have you as a resource.
For sure.
But yeah, it's been amazing learning all about this topic. I didn't learn that much, it's only a sliver because everything is so complicated. But yeah, I was kind of blown away by a lot of things today, and I really had an amazing time. And I appreciate you coming on. Do you have any final words of advice you'd have? Like if someone's debating taking an epigenetics test or really anything like that, like what would you say to them?
Yeah. So we offer a smaller kit too. Harley, you did the complete kit, which includes like everything. If you just want to dip your toes in the water and you're like, what the heck is all this stuff? Get our smaller kit. It just does the pace of aging and the telomere length. And I pretty much guarantee if you do that one, you'll be very curious and want to retest again. But my DMs are open. I'm open to chatting about anything, and would love to hear from everyone.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Yeah, I'll throw links of True Diagnostic and Everything Epigenetics and Hannah all in the description. And if anyone interested, go check them out because I've learned a ton just from following them already and, of course, having this conversation. So thanks so much.
Awesome. Thanks, Harley.